Okay, so imagine this. You're walking down the street, right? Same old, same old.
Yeah.
Houses, trees, that fire hydrant you've seen a million times. But this time, you're experiencing it all through your dog's nose.
Interesting.
Suddenly, that boring old walk. It's an explosion of smells. It's like a symphony coming from that fire hydrant, messages scribbled everywhere that only dogs can read. There's a whole world happening right under our noses, literally.
Honestly.
And that's what we're diving into today. How animal senses unlock these hidden realms all around us.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How complete is our own picture of reality, really? We forget every species, a tiny ant, a giant whale, they experience the world in their own way through their own, you could call it, sensory bubble.
Right. And there's actually a word for that. Umwelt. Don't ask me to spell it, but once I learned it, it was like, whoa. It's like we're all tuned to different channels of reality, picking up totally different signals.
That's a great way to put it. And those channels, they're tuned for survival. Take the scallop, for example. You wouldn't think a creature that basically just sits there would have much going on in the vision department, right?
Yeah. Delicious with some garlic butter, but not exactly known for their eyesight.
Well, get this. Scallops have eyes.
What?
Get out! And not just one or two. We're talking potentially hundreds lining their shells.
Hundreds of eyes. On a scallop? Okay, now that's just showing off.
It's true. And their eyes are surprisingly sophisticated for, a scallop. But here's the real kicker. Imagine a security guard, right? Hundreds of high-definition cameras, but the monitor only shows a simple blip. Something's there. That's kind of what scientists think a scallop's visual experience might be like. Seeing without forming a clear image in their mind.
So less about enjoying the scenery and more about just sensing something is there. That's wild. I mean, what's the point of all those eyes if they're not even getting a clear picture?
That's where the concept of the Umwelt comes in. See, the scallop's world, its Umwelt, doesn't require sharp images. Those blurry glimpses, those flashes of light and shadow, they're enough for them to survive in their environment.
I guess it puts things in perspective, right? It's not about some animals having better senses. It's just that their senses are perfectly tuned to their own little niche of the world.
Absolutely. And when you start looking at the animal kingdom through that lens, you realize just how incredible and diverse those adaptations can be.
Oh, it's like a sensory safari out there. We've got bats using echolocation, basically seeing by bouncing sound waves off objects. And get this, they even have to turn off their own hearing for a split second each time they send out a call. Otherwise, they deafen themselves.
It really is an arms race. Those calls can be incredibly intense. Some bat calls, if we could hear them, would be as loud as a jet engine.
Talk about needing noise-canceling headphones. But it's not just bats. Rattlesnakes, for example, they've evolved a way to see heat.
It's called infrared vision, and it allows them to detect the body heat of their prey, even in complete darkness. Imagine having built-in thermal imaging.
Okay, that's amazing. And also, a little creepy.
Researchers have shown that a blindfolded rattlesnake can still accurately strike a mouse based solely on its heat signature.
Wow. It makes you wonder what other assumptions we make about the world based on our limited senses.
Yeah.
Like we assume ice is cold, right?
Right.
But for a fish living in, like, frigid water, it's just part of their normal environment.
They lack the pain receptors that would make them perceive ice as painfully cold. In their welt, it's simply a different kind of frozen.
Huh. I never thought about it that way. It challenges everything we take for granted about temperature.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's talk about color for a second. We might look at a flower and think, oh, that's a beautiful red rose. But to a bee, it might look completely different.
Wait, so you're saying what we see as red, a bee might see as, what, polka dotted, striped?
Not exactly, but they do see ultraviolet patterns which are invisible to us.
Whoa.
Flowers have literally evolved to appeal to the eyes of pollinators like bees, not ours. It's like a whole secret language of colors and patterns right under our noses.
That's wild. It makes you wonder what else we're missing, just because our senses haven't evolved to pick up on it.
And that brings us to a really crucial point. Our senses don't just passively receive information from the world. They actively shape how we experience it, how we understand it, even how we value it.
Okay, I'm with you. But how does this whole big wealth thing, this idea of different sensory worlds, how does that actually apply to us? I'm not going to sprout echolocation or anything.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
But understanding big welts can change the way we interact with the world around us, and in some pretty big ways. For one, it can make us more aware of the impact we're having on other species.
You mean like noise pollution, light pollution, all that?
Exactly. It's not just about, our comfort or aesthetic preferences. When we flood the night sky with artificial light, for example, we're not just making it harder to see the stars, we're disrupting the navigation systems of migratory birds, throwing off the breeding cycles of fireflies, even confusing moths that rely on moonlight to find their way.
It's like we're throwing a wrench in the machinery of a system we don't even fully understand.
Precisely, and it's not just light and sound. Chemical pollution can interfere with the incredibly sensitive sense of smell that many animals rely on for finding food, attracting mates, even recognizing their own kin.
So what seems like a minor inconvenience to us could be a major disruption to an animal trying to navigate its own sensory world.
Exactly. But here's the good news. Once you start thinking about the world through the lens of welts, it can deepen your appreciation for the natural world.
How so?
Well, imagine taking a walk in the park, right? Seems pretty ordinary to you, but to your dog, it's an explosion of smells, a symphony of scents. They're getting a whole story that you can't even imagine.
It's like that feeling when you're a little kid and you see the world through your parents' eyes for a minute and suddenly everything's new and amazing.
Exactly, and that sense of wonder. It's available to us anytime we want it. All we have to do is open our minds to the possibility that other creatures are experiencing the same world in entirely different ways.
Okay, we've talked about a few different senses now, but this whole deep dive is really opening my eyes, no pun intended, to just how many different ways animals experience the sense of touch. Like those black ghost knife fish. They produce like weak electric fields around their bodies.
It's called electrolocation. It lets them navigate, find prey in murky waters where sight wouldn't be so useful.
So they're basically seeing with electricity. That's amazing.
And then you have harbor seals. Their whiskers are so sensitive they can detect the faintest trails left by fish even after the fish has long since passed.
Hold on, wait. They're tracking invisible fish trails.
Exactly. It's like they're reading Braille in the water. Their whiskers pick up those tiny disturbances in the water flow, gives them a whole extra layer of sensory input.
Evolution is amazing. Makes you wonder what else is out there, just beyond the reach of our senses.
Speaking of things beyond our reach, let's talk about hearing for a moment. We think of it as a pretty straightforward sense, but even there, the animal kingdom throws us curveballs.
Like those zebra finches. Their songs sound so fast to us, but you're saying our ears are actually missing a lot of the detail.
Exactly. They produce these incredibly rapid changes in pitch and volume that our ears just can't process quickly enough. It's like listening to a sped-up recording. We miss all the nuances that are crucial to the birds themselves.
It's like their songs are in a whole other temporal dimension that makes you think, what else are we filtering out just because of the limits of our own brains?
It's a humbling thought, for sure.
This whole deep dive has been a masterclass in perspective shifting. It's like suddenly the world is a much richer, more vibrant place than we ever imagined.
And that even the smallest, most insignificant creatures are experiencing this world in ways that we're only just starting to understand.
Speaking of small creatures and incredible senses, I have to bring up those tree hoppers. They send vibrations through plants, right?
Huh?
Like a secret communication network.
Exactly. It's called vibrational communication. It lets them send messages through the stems and leaves of plants without ever making a sound that predators could hear.
And when scientists amplified those vibrations, they discovered something amazing. Those silent signals actually translate into some pretty incredible sounds. Some of them sound like a lion's purr, others like a chorus of crickets, and some sound downright musical.
It's like there's a hidden symphony playing out across the plant kingdom.
It really makes you wonder what other sensory experiences are going on right under our noses, literally, that we're totally oblivious to.
And that is the beauty of the welt concept. It opens up a world of possibilities, a sense of wonder about the hidden complexities of nature that we're only just beginning to uncover.
You know, it's funny. We've spent this whole deep dive exploring all these amazing senses: sight, smell, hearing, touch, heck, even electric fields and magnetic fields.
Right.
But what if there's a whole other, I don't know, a whole buffet of senses out there that we haven't even discovered yet?
That's what's so exciting about this field. What we know about animal senses is just the tip of the iceberg. There could be totally new sensory modalities out there, ways of perceiving the world that we can't even begin to fathom.
It's mind-blowing. The more we learn, the more we realize we don't know. Maybe we'll find animals that can sense gravity waves or communicate telepathically or perceive like dimensions beyond our comprehension.
It's possible. Every new discovery just opens up a whole universe of new questions, new possibilities, and that's what makes studying animal senses so captivating, you know? It's a constant journey of discovery. a reminder that the world is far more complex and multifaceted than we often assume.
No kidding. This whole thing has been a real mind expander for sure. Makes you realize what we perceive as reality is just our limited interpretation of it, shaped by the senses we happen to have.
That's a really profound insight, and one that I think has a lot of potential for us as humans. When we recognize those limitations, our own limitations of perception, it can help us to be more open-minded, more compassionate, more appreciative of the incredible diversity of life on Earth.
Totally. It's like that saying, walk a mile in another man's shoes.
Mhm.
Except in this case, it's see the world through a bat's ears or smell the forest floor through a dog's nose.
Exactly. And the more we can do that, the more we can start to break down these artificial barriers, the ones we've created between ourselves and the rest of the natural world.
It makes me think of that William Blake quote. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour.
Beautiful. It really speaks to that sense of awe, of wonder that comes from recognizing the interconnectedness of all things, those infinite possibilities, even in the smallest, seemingly most insignificant creatures.
Well said. This whole deep dive has really left me with a renewed appreciation for the natural world, and a sense of excitement for all the mysteries still out there, just waiting to be uncovered.
I'm so glad to hear that. And remember, this journey of discovery, it doesn't end here. Keep those senses sharp, keep asking questions, and keep exploring the world around you with a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness. You never know what incredible wonders you might find.
You got that right. Well, thanks for being such a fantastic guide on this sensory adventure. It's been a real pleasure.
My pleasure entirely.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the incredible world of animal senses. We hope you've enjoyed the journey.
Until next time, keep exploring.